Realized I had to show up.
It helps.
Surprise, here I am. Did you want to do anything ahead of time? I mean, please come on down.
We were going to introduce you. We just
Go ahead,
lost
go ahead and introduce me.
Who is he again?
I'm not here.
So, hello, welcome to Gibson's Bookstore. If this is your first author event at Gibson's Bookstore, welcome. If you are one of our repeat offenders, welcome back. Today we are very pleased to have a heavyweight in the science fiction author community. He was the president of the Science Fiction Writers of America group for several years, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years? 3 years.
3 long years.
He has won Hugo Awards for your little book, you might know, this one, and then 2 for your blog.
2 for blog.
As well, so that's 3 Hugo Awards. I mean, that's pretty sweet. So, he is the author of Red Shirts, but today we are very pleased to welcome him for Lock In. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you for having me. This is actually only the second time in my life that I've ever been in New Hampshire. And the very first time was something like 25 years ago. I was a student at the University of Chicago, which we have another alumni here. And Dartmouth, which is some college that you may have heard of that's in the state, called me up and they said, you know, we have this reputation for being a party school. And I said, yes, in fact, I'd heard that. And they said, well, we looked to see what was the opposite of the party school that Dartmouth is, and we came up with the University of Chicago. So we wanted to have you come out and come out during Green Key weekend, right? And I was like, challenge accepted, and I came out. And it was actually an amazing time. Everybody, of course, was drinking. But the most interesting thing for me was that they did this competition of a cappella. You know, they do the a cappella sings and stuff like that. And I remember vividly, all the a cappella things were wonderful, but there was this one girl, and she was about this tall. She was cute as a button. And she did this thing where she took a hanger, and she bent it out of shape. She put a penny on the hook of it, and she spun it while she sang the Toys R Us theme backwards. And I don't think I've ever been in love more than I was with that woman. Because I was just like, I don't know who you are, but I know that we were meant for each other. And I never saw her again. I don't know. She might be here. If you are her, please raise your hand. My wife won't be happy, but I have to know. Now, before I begin, actually, there's something that I want to do, and I hope you will actually indulge me in this, because I think it's a good thing to do. I was talking to my friend, Marco Cluse, not too long ago. And Marco is a writer. He's written a couple of very well-received science fiction books. He's also a former student of mine. What happened is he was joking, because I was talking about going on tour and, you know, coming out and seeing people. And he says, yes, one day I will be on tour, and there will be 2 people in the audience, and they'll both be from the bookstore, and it will be a pity audience, you know. And I was like, no, this will not happen to my friend and former student, Marco Cluse. So with your indulgence, I'm actually going to have him be my opening act right now. He's going to read something for you. It'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll get on to it. Is that okay with you? Would you like to start? Here he is. I'm so proud because I was an instructor at Bible Paradise, which is a week-long writing seminar in Martha's Vineyard. And he was there, and it's just that sort of thing that happens when somebody that you've, you know, taught, or at least taught at, you know, begins to start publishing. You feel like a little bit of pride. And I don't think you're actually any younger than I am. You are. Wait, how old are you now? 42. Yeah, so he's 3 years younger, so he could be my son. So anyway, he's going to read to you. Here we go. Go ahead.
I don't even know what this guy is. I just walked in from the street. It said lock in. I figured it had something to do with the mortgage.
Is the microphone on?
Lift the microphone
second?
Yeah, because you mumble.
Okay, I do. I can read a crowd, and I know what you're thinking. This man is not John Scalzi. We paid for John Scalzi, not this cruel facsimile.
They didn't actually pay, so they get what they get.
In that case, you're getting every penny, a penny's worth. Yeah, my name is Mark McClose. I have a few novels out, and I am actually from the exotic locale of Enfield, New Hampshire, which is almost an hour away from here. And I have a thing that I brought that was in this anthology called Unidentified Funny Objects. John asked me to bring something quick and funny, and this is just about the only funny thing I've written so far. That's non-dystopian and non-depressing and to make you want to go home and drink. The scene is in the future. This is where you say, ooh. Earth in the future is run by a theocracy called the Leviticans, and they have outlawed fun and everything that conceivably be turned into fun. No, nothing, partying, no alcohol, no cake, no nothing. And our hero, Moses, his father, Amos, lives in a church-run retirement home, and for his 150th birthday, he would really like a stripper and a cake, which is of course extremely illegal under this government. So I'm reading you the middle part of the short story where Moses actually goes to Mars, procures a Martian, what they call pleasure engineer, and smuggles her by declaring her as nuclear waste back to Earth, because see, Moses is an interstellar vacuum salesman. So he brings this stripper and a cake to his grandfather in the retirement home, and this is where the short story picks up. Anybody hear my cuss words? Okay, I'll be easy. So Moses walks into the room where his father stays, and with his big cake on wheels, basically, that has a stripper hidden inside of it. Holy crap, the little bastard came through, Amos said when Moses pushed the equipment cart into his father's room. Looks like I won't have to disown you after all. There's not much left on that cred stick for me to inherit, Moses puffed. Happy birthday, Dad, and just so we're clear, this will be your birthday gift for all the rest of them, too. Amos eyed the big box on top of the cart. That better be what I hope it is. You'll see. Moses closed the door behind him, took out the media player Kendra, which is the Martian pleasure engineer, had given him, and placed it on the table next to the door. Then he hugged the vacuum box and lifted it upward. That, his dad said, is one ugly-ass cake. It looks like a trash can with a turd on top. Dad, I'm a vacuum salesman, not a confectioner. That's the best I could do. Now shut up for a second. He pressed the play button on the screen of the player, and a Martian pop tune blared from the speakers at impressively high volume. The top of the cake popped off, sending bits of frosting flying, and Kendra unfolded herself out of the center, wearing a radiant smile and very little else. Then she started moving to the music. I take it back, Amos shouted against the music after a few stunned moments. This is the most gorgeous cake I've ever seen in my life. He stuck 2 fingers into his mouth and let out a long, piercing wolf whistle that made Moses clap his hands over his ears. Dad, keep it down! Behind him, the door opened and a night nurse walked in. She took one look at the giant cake and the woman sensuously gyrating in the middle of it, gasped, and fled the room. Kendra kept on dancing, unperturbed. Moses looked around the corner and saw the nurse hurrying toward the watch station at the end of the floor. Great. He reached over and turned off the music. She's calling the cops right now, Dad. There's a vice police station just around the corner. We'll have the law on our heads in 5 minutes, tops. Well then, Amos said, finally diverting his gaze from Kendra. She stepped out of the cake and gathered her hair in a ponytail again. We are completely going to prison, Moses said. There's no way we can eat all the evidence before they get here. Get out, you daft bugger, Amos said, unless you want to record this for posterity. You know, as a memento. Moses left the room without further argument. The vice police came up in the elevator just a few minutes later. Moses rushed ahead to meet them, but backed off when he saw that both officers had their stun sticks drawn. What seems to be the problem of shut up, the lead officer said. He had the humorless expression that seemed to be standard issue along with those stun sticks. There's illegal drugs in that room over there, and debauchery. You are under arrest, friend. Mortal sinning and 4th-degree immorality. They shoved him up against the wall, and Moses felt a set of cuffs locking around his wrists. Then they pulled him along to his dad's room, where the loud music had started again. The lead officer did not bother with the formality of trying the door handle first. He raised the hobnailed boot and kicked the door open. Then he went in, stun stick raised. Freeze, sinner! There was an ear-splitting boom, and the cop froze in place, the remnants of his stun stick raining down onto the dingy floor. "Freeze yourself, you jackass!" Amos shouted back. "Hit it, lady! We're busting out of this joint!" There was a sound like a vacuum cleaner engine straining at a clogged intake hose, and then Amos's bed came shooting into the hallway, knocking the lead cop down on the way out. The second officer looked dumbfounded, the expression seemed to come naturally to him, at the sight of an anti-grav bed with an armed centum quinquagenarian, that's a tough word for a non-native speaker, and a barely clothed Martian prostitute on it. The .45 in Amos's hand looked like much more impressive than the stun stick the second cop was holding. The bed took a sharp left turn and shot down the hallway, the music from Kendra's media player blaring. Amos whooping and hollering all the way. Moses heard Kendra's silver bright laugh just before the bed crashed through the window at the end of the hallway and dipped out of sight. There was a moment of absolute stunned silence in the hallway. "You have got to be kidding me," Moses said. The first cop picked himself up off the floor. The remnants of the stun stick were still dangling from his wrist on a lanyard. He snatched up his hat, put it back on his head, and went back into Amos's room. The second cop followed him, dragging Moses along. The cake was still on the floor, an extremely obvious violation of celestial dietary law. The nightstand's drawer stood opened and empty. On top of the nightstand, there was a large toolkit and a worn nylon pouch, a glass that still had whiskey in it, and a half-eaten piece of cake. The lead cop walked over to the nightstand, took a whiff of the glass, and made a face. "Alcohol," he said. "Firearms. Hookers. Cake. Someone's going to do a lot of time for this. 50 to life and eternal damnation." They walked down the length of the corridor to the broken window. Moses peered outside, expecting to see a mangled mess of retiree, prostitute, and anti-grav bed. Instead, there was nothing below but the smooth concrete of the parking lot. He thought he heard faint Martian pop music fading into the distance. Moses suppressed the urge to pinch the bridge of his nose. He fished a cred stick out of his back pocket with shackled hands and held it out to the lead officer. "Take out whatever you need," he said. "And I'm sure you'll want to secure the evidence in the room too. It would be a shame if someone made off with 50 pounds of Martian sugar cake. That stuff must be worth tens of thousands." The cop looked at him with an unreadable expression. Then he snatched the cred stick and looked at it. He took out his PDA, put the stick into the transfer receptacle, and checked the balance of the cred stick. Then he took off his hat with his free hand and scratched his scalp. "Unlock those shackles, Sam. This gentleman obviously is just an innocent bystander. Sorry for the inconvenience, sir."
You're very welcome. I hope that was as good for you as it was for us.
It was terrifying. I just have to pretend like everybody here is gonna. We're at a con and you're all sitting in my room on the bed and I'm about to mix you cocktails.
And now you know what we're doing after the reading. Okay, so now actually comes me. Hi. Nice to see you. And what I usually do at this point is I have 3 readings that I'm going to read to you. One is the primary reading, and then I'm going to have a couple of humorous bits. And usually when I'm on tour, what I don't like to do is read from the book that is out already, which would be Lock-In, because chances are you have it and are already reading it, and also you actually came out and made the effort to be here. So what I like to do actually is to read to you from an upcoming work. And it's only for people who are here right now. Those of you who are recording know to snip this out when it goes off to things. But basically what I want to do is read it for you. It's part of the Old Man's War series. It's the follow-up to the Human Division 2, the Division in as I like to call it. I will tell you the name of the book, but you got to promise not to actually go out and tweet it. It is called The End of All Things, which is very cheerful. It's going to be a musical. So I'm going to read to you from that, and then I'm also going to read to you, like I said, a couple of humorous pieces from the way, way past. So are you okay with hearing something from the new book? Because if you want, I'll just read from Lock-In. I mean, it's all up to you, but I think that it's fun. Like I said, you guys have made the effort to be here. I want to make sure that you get something out of it that nobody else who doesn't come to the tour gets. So, now, before I begin the reading from the Human Division 2, let me ask, how many of you have not read the Human Division so that I can get a good idea of, okay. I'm going to give you all a quick background on this piece so that you don't get lost by what's going on. Human Division is the 5th book in the Old Man's War series, and in the Old Man's War series there's this thing that's called the Colonial Union. The Colonial Union is a government that rules over a bunch of planets that are populated by humans. Now, there's also the Earth over here to the side, and the thing about the Earth is it's not officially part of the Colonial Union, because the Colonial Union for the last couple of hundred years has been farming the Earth for both colonists and for soldiers. It uses the colonists to populate the worlds very quickly, so it makes it more difficult for the aliens to scrape them off the planet. And they use the soldiers so that they can shoot at the aliens, you know, like you do. So this has been a pretty good arrangement for the Colonial Union for about a couple hundred years. But at the beginning of the Human Division, somebody, John Perry, at the end of the last colony, goes to the Earth and says, hey, do you know that you've actually been in an abusive relationship for the last 2 decades? And the Earth finds out and is very upset about this, and so when the Human Division begins, the Earth and the Colonial Union are undergoing a trial separation. Well, at the end of the Colonial Union, there is a space station above the Earth, which is called, in a moment of pure creativity from the author, Earth Station. And that station is destroyed, and from the Earth's point of view, it's pretty clear to them that it was the Colonial Union that did it. So that trial separation has now become a full-fledged divorce. And this is not good news for the Colonial Union, because the Colonial Union has now lost its pipeline to colonists, has now lost its pipeline to soldiers. There is a bunch of aliens that are out there. They formed a political union, and they're just waiting for the humans to fail and then scrape them off the planet. And conservatively, as the end of all things begins, the Colonial Union has about roughly 20 to 30 years before it all falls apart and humanity is doomed and becomes an alien sandwich. So that's the end of the Human Division, and as this one begins, this would be about chapter 3 in the new book. We're about to find that as bad as things have gotten for humanity, there's always a chance for them to get just a little bit worse. So.